Yeah, I don't know. All right. Holy cow.
Human health studies today, Jen.
Yes.
Okay, we're pretty much 2 minutes out, so I'm going to go silent here in the studio. So good luck, guys. Have a good show, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Thank you.
Thank you. I
Did your
like
call
the
go okay?
yeah, I'll talk about
Good.
it with you afterwards.
Yeah, that's good.
Just lessons learned.
Yeah. What else was there? I talked to Mike briefly about this hiring,
Yep.
and I keep coming back to it, Jen. Like, this is where IE3 should step in, right? Isn't it? As an option.
Yeah, I guess.
That's kind of what we're trying to do, isn't it? Help facilitate this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, if it has a cost, fine, but that's fine. It's
Okay,
part
well,
of the
that's
cost
something
of
we
doing
can chat
business.
with Michael about. Michael Rate.
Yes,
Uh-oh,
yeah. No,
I
I mean,
have to
again, like
sneeze.
present options, right?
Hmm.
Like Mike said, he goes, "Well, geez, I could do it, but I got to get paid to do it." You know what I mean? I'm willing
Yeah.
to step up, and I got to make something out of it. And I said,
Oh, that's
we're the
it.
same way.
And same with the band offices.
Yes, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, ideally, right? The band offices should be doing this because it's their business. They need to start setting themselves up. But the reality is that they're not all set up that way, just for a variety of reasons, right? And you know, that's just the way it is right now. It'll change, obviously, but if that's the way it is, then we got to offer an option to help make this happen because you don't want a situation where you don't have monitors, right?
Hmm.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Don Parkinson, and I'm a senior consultation specialist with Atkins Realis. Today, we are continuing our series of live stream topics on the Northern Road Link project as it moves through the provincial environmental assessment and federal impact assessment processes. The topics we are covering parallel our project activities, so we hope these will help our viewers and listeners better understand the project and provide input along the way. And with me, as usual, is my co host, Jennifer Ashawazage Pereira, my colleague and an Indigenous engagement and traditional knowledge specialist at Atkins Realis. Jennifer is a member of Henvey Inlet First Nation, located on the French River south of Sudbury, and works with me on our projects across Canada. Good afternoon, Jen. How are you?
Good afternoon. Happy to be here because I missed our last session.
You did. You did. Yeah. It's everybody's here today. We got the whole team, and today we're going to talk about the human health studies that we're doing as part of the environmental and impact assessments. And
Fantastic.
yeah, let's get started. These are important studies,
Hmm.
as all of them are, but this one in particular is is human. It's on the human side, so it's really, really important. So let's run through what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do a bit of a project background, as we like to do.
Hmm.
We're going to do talk about what health impact assessments are, uh, the objectives of health impact assessments, the details, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, spoiler
And
alert as we move through, Don. I like how holistic HIAs or health impact assessments
yeah,
are.
that's a great point, Jen. And we're gonna talk a bit about. We're gonna demonstrate how holistic they are as we move through this. You're right,
That's
because
right.
we get into a lot of really interesting areas, and how how holistic and inclusive, I guess, is another word for them
Mm-hmm.
too. I guess, would you say
I
inclusive?
would say so.
Well, let's give a little background on
All
the
right.
Northern Road Link project. The Northern Road Link is a proposed all-season road in Northern Ontario on Treaty 9 land. It would connect the Ring of Fire mineral deposits to the all-season provincial highway network through a connection with the planned Martin Falls Community Access Road, or MFCAR. At the same time, it would connect with the planned Webequie Supply Road, which is to the north, and that would give an opportunity for Webequie First Nation community members to connect ultimately to the provincial highway network.
Mm-hmm.
And this project is subject to the Environmental Assessment Act, which is provincial, and the Federal Impact Assessment Act. Um, Interestingly enough, for this project, the proponents are Martin Falls First Nation and Webequie First Nation. Uh, these two First Nations stepped up and worked with the province in 2020. They agreed to work together and conduct an environmental assessment, an impact assessment as well. And both of these communities, I should add, are remote communities, so they're only accessible by winter road. And it's a very expensive way of life living in these communities as well too.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
We're just reconnecting everybody. There's a weather event going on right now, so I suspect it's affecting internet. So for all our
Yeah, there.
for viewers out there, we will get back on track soon. We just came back from our technical difficulties page, and we're just going to reconnect on.
And we're having pretty severe weather here where I am.
Are you? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty crazy here.
it's very windy and raining pretty hard outside.
Yeah, we're starting to get snow.
Oh,
It was 12 degrees yesterday, and now it's plunged to minus. So
snows.
yeah, we got the snow, so hopefully we can get Dawn back. Otherwise, you and I will have to go through the presentation.
Tony.
For everybody, for anybody watching this after the fact.
Hey, there's
Oh,
Don.
hey, we got Dawn back. So we're having a
Oh,
weather
good.
event. We're just letting listeners know. Dawn, we're having
Okay, where were we? I'm not sure
We were just about to go to the map.
where we got cut
just
off.
about to go to the map, I believe.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
so
So
I'm going to pass it back to you. We're off for technical difficulties. Sorry, viewers, and let's begin again.
okay, so we were at the alternative corridors map. Is
Yes.
that the map we were talking about? Okay, good,
Yes.
thank you. So the road, as I mentioned before, I'm not sure if everyone heard, but ranges in length from 117 to 164 kilometers. And the reason why at this point is the final route has not been
Okay, guys are back. Sorry, it cut out just as you were starting to talk about the map again.
The alternative corridors.
okay. Okay. So can we go to that map
Just,
then?
just so you know, John,
Oh,
I'm also having bad weather.
Oh, really? Okay.
there we go.
All right. So, I'll, uh, I think we need to go to the alternative corridors map. Yeah, we're getting closer. That's it. Okay. So I mentioned before that the length ranges from 117 to 164 kilometers. This is because we do not have a final route identified yet. We're very close. But once we select between the different alternative segments and then connect them together, we should then have a final route, which is a corridor that's 2 kilometers in width, and that gives us enough room within which to position the road. So that will be forthcoming very shortly. In terms of health impact assessments, if we can move to that slide, please. There we go. And what they are, uh, they assess the project for possible effects on the population's health and how those effects might be distributed within the population. These are evidence-based assessments, but the most important thing to remember is they evaluate both the potential good and bad things, or like beneficial and harmful effects of the project on human health. So
Yeah.
it's not just
Pros and
all,
cons.
yes, it's not all just the harmful effects, but it's actually the good effects, because quite often there are good effects of a project. That's why typically these projects are put forward, right? Because they can serve as a benefit in some form or another to the community. In terms of objectives, there's a number of them providing a clear understanding of both those positive and negative uh, health and well-being, right, Jen? Because well-being is a little bit different from health, right? It's a little bit more holistic, I would say, right?
That's right.
So it
And
takes into account probably more mental, it's more on the mental side, I would say,
mental and spiritual and emotional,
and
because we look at
spiritual.
the
Yeah,
entire, I would say we look at the entire medicine wheel.
yeah, that's it. That's right. That's exactly it. Um, And as with other studies, all the other studies that we do as part of an EA or IA, Indigenous knowledge informs the HIA. In fact, it informs it quite a bit, right, Jen? Uh, Between community input, Indigenous knowledge, it's almost, critical. It's so critical to the health impact assessments. And you and I have firsthand been involved in this kind of work in the community, and so much valuable information is collected through one-on-one and group interviews with community members, isn't it?
It is, and if I can add something else, Don, everybody hears a lot about baseline studies, but for health impact assessment and a couple of other studies, we don't look at what the baseline is currently with regards to human beings, I'm going to say, but we also look at the impacts from colonization. That's included in
Yeah,
the baseline study, and that's important to note, right?
that's a great point. Yeah, history has so much to do, right, with
With the
um,
current baseline.
yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit later on.
Mhm,
Um, and so if the EA or IA is approved, it will serve as guidance. So the HIA serves as guidance as to how to protect and to monitor or enhance the health and well-being of community members. So um, uh, it's really important. This health impact assessment, there's a lot of activities associated with it, but it's extremely important. So what's an HIA based on, you may ask? Well, it's based on a lot of things, is my simple
yes.
answer. Determinants of health, which is, there aren't just a few of them, there's a lot of them. Those being, the more obvious, maybe straightforward ones, like the biophysical ones, like air, noise, water. But then there's something called GBA plus, which is gender based analysis plus. And this is an important one. We're going to get into this in a little bit more detail, but that's where the inclusiveness part that we were talking about earlier fits in. And then there are what
Mhm,
you call the social determinants of health, and there are many of these, and some of these, in a general sense, would include housing and healthcare as well too. But let's look now at the social determinants of health, because that's a big topic. Um, so the social determinants of health, they represent what is being considered when doing the health impact assessment to understand possible impacts to the health and well-being of community members. And these are identified during the sort of what you call the scoping step, where you're identifying, okay,
mhm,
what you're going to do as part of the various studies. And some of the examples of these social determinants are food production, education and learning, work, so employment and income, um, transportation networks, diversity, democracy, and governance. How the community is administered from a governance point of view, housing, culture and spirituality, um, basic utilities like water, electricity, um, and then health and social care as well. Then this next slide, this is one that I can't remember where I got this from, the First Nations Health Authority, but I thought this was a really good slide. It's a pretty good graphic, and it sort of encompasses, I guess, the First Nations perspective on health and wellness, and there's so many
mhm.
components to it. And Jen, you touched on these earlier, didn't you? Right, the spiritual and the mental and emotional side,
Yes.
right?
Ensuring
But
ensuring
you've
all
got
the quadrants on the medicine wheel are filled, and that's emotional, physical, spiritual, and did I say mental already?
no, you didn't.
Okay.
But there's other ones, like interesting ones on here too, right? Relationships and family and wisdom, right? And land,
Mhm. Yeah,
so it's
and
very,
and that's it, and not these things can't all just be categorized because they
no,
overlap.
no. Oh, so much, right? there's no single graphic, right, that can really capture that
Mhm.
because it's too complex to graphic
Well, that's
to
right. Because
simplify it
for
into a graphic.
just for respect and relationships, I think I can think about so many different things, not just relationships with other human beings, but the relationship with the land and the water.
Yes.
And then,
Yeah.
respect
The
for
animals. Yeah.
all of these living things. Yeah, people and animals and water, and so on. So all of these things kind of overlap.
They sure do. And let's now look at the sort of the biophysical preliminary criteria or valued components. These are
Mhm.
the things that are identified as being important and as being needed to be studied. So let's look at this table here now. So you've got these for biophysical determinants of health. You've got air quality, right? You've got noise. You've got vibration. You've got surface water, groundwater, and then you've got soil quality, right? Because you're eating plants. They're coming from they're growing in the soil. Um, Country foods. Members live off the land, right? They're living off what they harvest, whether it's animals or plants. And so understanding those country foods and the chemical composition of those country foods to have that baseline is really important. And then associated with each VC or valued component, you've got these indicators, right? These measures. So for example, air quality, dust emissions and greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle exhaust. These are health indicators. These are biophysical health indicators. Um, and then looking at changes, whether it's qualitative, meaning descriptive, or quantitative, meaning measurable with numbers, changes between phases of the project. So there's a lot there. This is just the tip of the iceberg when
Mhm.
it comes to those. Let's move now to the gender-based analysis side of things. So we call this GBA plus, gender-based analysis plus, determinants of health. And just to provide some background on this, um, this is a required approach under the Federal Impact Assessment Act, and it recognizes uh, the historical and current power structure. So whether it's laws or policies or governments, so things like the Indian Act, for example, right, Jen, and or other
Mhm.
institutions. So it recognized that those things have shaped society mostly negatively and created a lot of inequalities. And these still exist. Many, if not most of them, still exist. And people
Mhm.
carry these, right, from generation to generation. Um, so my next point is this is particularly important with respect to the legacies of colonialism and the impacts on Indigenous people, particularly women, right, Jen?
Yeah, and I would also add two-spirited and non-binary to that.
Yep, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's what GBA Plus is meant to do, right? It's meant to be inclusive. It's meant to be able to ensure that decisions are made in a very inclusive manner so that you're hearing all voices and you're looking through
Mhm.
all lenses or as many of them as you possibly can. So again, my last point is aims to engage, identify and address diverse effects on women, youth, elders, and other potentially vulnerable groups in the community. Very often, as you know, Jen, in the past, when visiting communities, you're not always getting perhaps a true, robust sort of cross section of opinions, maybe when you're at a community meeting. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Thinking
And
also
so,
about my own community and having been in other ones, um, always certain people always come out, and it's nice to try and spend time with other community members as well.
so the beauty of having this um, prescribed per se under the Federal Impact
Hmm.
Assessment Act is it requires the proponent to the degree that they can, right, make that effort to try to hear the voices of as many groups as possible, whether it's non-binary, two-spirited, whatever groups, right? And so that effort there has to be a demonstrated effort to hear those voices. Sometimes those voices just don't want to be heard. Sometimes, unfortunately, that happens, but that effort has to be made. And so, fortunately, now it's sort of mandated and prescribed as part of the process. And let's take a look actually at GBA Plus and maybe provide an example to help explain this a little bit better. Because GBA Plus, as I mentioned, it sort of aims to engage, identify, and address diverse effects on women, youth, elders, other vulnerable groups in the community. So if we take safety of women and girls, Jen, um,
Mm-hmm.
the kinds of indicators we would look at for a project like this might be, okay, rates of domestic violence, have they increased? Have they decreased? Or do we anticipate that happening? Looking into, you know, taking everything into consideration, you might look at that. You might look at sexual, physical assault, um, talking to women in the community. Do you feel safer now with a road in place than before, or less so? Their perception of safety, um, crime rates, things like that. Substance
Mm-hmm.
use, has it increased, decreased? Is it stabilizing? Um, Supply and demand of emergency services, right? Has it improved, or could it improve? So I think that's a pretty that's a key one, isn't it, Jen? The safety of women and girls, and it's for something like a road project, an all-season road project with an ultimate connection to the provincial highway
Mm-hmm.
network. It's a really important consideration, isn't it?
That's right. And certainly there are a lot of concerns in there and things that people are thinking about and things that people have told us about on kind of sporadically, right, Don? We've heard little bits here and
Yeah.
there. And so those are things that we're always on the lookout for.
And there are ways of mitigating these.
Mm-hmm.
There's some, I know you've expressed some really good ideas about how these things can be mitigated, and but again, like anything else, right? If just like whether it's water quality or something else, you know if if there is a possibility of like, if there are potential effects anticipated, then we have to identify mitigation methods.
That's right.
So that's where we all have to put on our thinking caps and think about how can we try, what programs can we put in place, or what systems can be put in place to try to minimize any potential impact. So hopefully that makes it pretty clear how GBA Plus works. Next, we're just going to do like an overview of how the health impact assessments um, process works. It's pretty logical, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the first thing is whether it's required at all. In this case, it is required. It was identified as being required for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then there's a scoping step where you try to figure out, okay, what are we going to do as part of these studies? Um, then when you're doing the studies, you're identifying possible impacts to the health and how those effects might get distributed across the population, across the community members. And then there's recommendations, right, and strategies, which are important because they can help guide actually communities. Projects like this can help, through studies like this, can help provide a bit of I guess a path moving forward for communities in terms of identifying maybe infrastructure requirements when it comes to healthcare or other possible key infrastructure to help the community members. So
Mm-hmm.
these
And
are
I
these.
would add one more thing to that and help create or develop that safety net
Yeah, that's a great
when we're
point.
looking
Yeah.
when we're looking at mitigations. That's kind of what I would call it, a safety net.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the other thing that I think about this, if a report like this is done well, it can be used by the community to bring forward to different levels of government, right? To ask for more support, for more infrastructure, for more assistance when it comes to any number of different services, right?
Yeah,
Social
programs,
services. So
education and awareness, stuff like
yes,
that, I
yeah.
think,
So
because
this
there's a
that's why,
whole lot that
if it's
whole
done
lot of
well,
things to think about.
these reports, yeah, if it's done well, these reports can be used for lots of other good things to help the community. And again, communicating the results and recommendation to stakeholders and decision makers, that's the reporting end, and then the evaluation or monitoring side. And I just want to remind everyone that, we always say, what if the EA is approved, that doesn't mean everything stops, all activity stops. There's a monitoring phase, there's a compliance phase where we
Mhm.
check and make sure that everything that we anticipated is being mitigated to the extent that we anticipated it to be mitigated. And if it isn't, then we say, okay, what are we going to do here, and have a good detailed look at it, and make adjustments to reduce those impacts. So it's a pretty thorough process. There's a lot more to it. I mean, we're not doing it justice necessarily, doing it in such a short period of time, covering it in such a short period of time, but it's still, I think this does give people an idea. So that wraps up today's discussion of the human health
Well, that went
studies,
by
and we hope,
fast.
yeah, it sure did. Sorry to everybody for the technical difficulties, but that's what happens sometimes, right? When you're using technology and you've got weather and
Weather.
yeah, so stuff happens. So we hope this was helpful, and it encourages you to join us again next week when we discuss the migratory bird studies. Don't forget to
Nice.
keep in touch with our project team members via the contact information available on our website, northernroadlink.ca. Miigwech, and make sure to look out for project updates on social media and our website. See you soon.
Bum up.